Hello everyone, Steve Hunter. I'm back for another wood carving video today. And for this one I was feeling a little bit nostalgic, thinking about some of my favorite TV shows from when I was a kid. And one of those shows, of course, was Gilligan's Island. And with needing a subject for a carving video, I thought, why not carve one of those characters? So if you're wanting to take a trip down memory lane here and while you learn how to carve a character, you're in the right place. Let's carve Gilligan. Okay, let's get started making Gilligan from Gilligan's Island. And today we're starting out with a piece of basswood that's 4 inches long, and it was cut on the diagonal out of a 2x2 block of basswood. So that's what we're starting with today. First things first, let's get our safety gear on and our cut resistant glove on our dominant or non-dominant hand. And on our dominant hand, we're going to put a thumb guard. Okay, we want to make sure we're safe. Now today, for the majority of the carving, I'm just going to be using this Badger State Blades knife. It's just a standard knife and 1.5 inches long. And we will be using a few gouges today too, a little later on. It just helps with around the eyes and stuff. So to get started, when you pick up a block of wood like this, we got sharp corners, sharp edges, and a peak. Now it's nice to carve a face out of a triangle piece because it helps us with the shape right away. However, we don't need the sharp point. And my opinion is that if you deal with this right away, you're less likely to maintain that triangle shape when you're done with your carving. It won't be as evident that you started with a triangle. So first thing I like to do when I start working on faces for out of a piece of wood like this is I go ahead and I knock down the peak. And it's kind of just a nice little warm-up too, if you haven't been carving. You see these sharp edges. You can't really carve anything out here on the edges anyway. So let's go ahead and clean those up. Take them back to maybe 1/8 of an inch wide or something like that. We'll get both sides. I'm going to take off my watch because it's banging on the desk once in a while and it's kind of distracting. So we'll get rid of that. Okay, now that we have our points cut off, I'm just going to kind of round this a little bit more. Now, if you remember, Gilligan always had that white hat on, and sometimes it was turned up right in the front, and most of the time it was kind of set back on the back side of his head. So one of the first things that I want to do, just to kind of get our bearings here, is we'll do a little bit of drawing. I'll try to hold this up here so you can see it. We're going to have a little bit of the back of his hat showing at the top. So let's just leave a little bit up there that we can do that with. And then starting here, we're going to make kind of the front of his hat. I'm not going to do the fully turned up version. I'm just going to do where it's just kind of sitting back on his head. So we want to make that kind of a nice round line over towards the edges. Just kind of rough sketch it in there. Bring it right out to the edges so we're getting the most use out of the wood, and then we can curve it back just a little bit. We'll have it kind of fall back in behind his head here. Okay. Okay, now the next thing I want to mark out is the brim of that hat. Now it's going to be kind of standing up, maybe at like a 45-degree angle. But we'll see that brim of that hat kind of frame his head. So let's go ahead and take roughly 1/4 of an inch, draw another line just kind of parallel to the first one, and we'll just bring it around like that. We'll have his ears in here somewhere, but for now we can just do that. Okay, so all this out here can be removed, so we can go ahead and do that right now. Just staying a little ways away from that line and just kind of taking bites off as I go. Okay, so do the same on this side. We can go ahead and cut this, mark this line in a little bit too. We do want the very outside edge of this to be the most forward. So this interior line here will be kind of, we'll angle it back like this. Okay, so we'll go ahead and kind of keeping that in mind, we're going to angle our knife in towards the face. We'll just kind of get that marked out for right now. We'll come back. Okay, now that we have that marked, let's think a little bit about what we're going to end up with here now. This is still sticking out too far. We'll want to take some more of that off in the center. And then just kind of round it back a little bit. Again, just trying to avoid having a figure at the end that looks like a triangle. And draw our line back in there. Okay. Hey guys, just taking a little break from the video here. Just kind of remind you that we have a website, huntersmake.com, and I have some Badger State Blades knives, some carving gear, some safety equipment, carving cut gloves, and some other products that I've shown on the channel. Feel free to go check that out. I'd appreciate it. They're so kind of a good way for you and I for getting a little support for the channel, supporting this hobby, and would appreciate it if you'd check that out. If there's something you need, pick it up. I do want to also mention that in the past on the website, some of our shipping didn't always have that all figured out, and sometimes it was a little bit high for shipping cost. We've made some changes, and now there's either a small fee for shipping or no fee for shipping. Most of the time I try to get it set to where shipping's just included. So just to simplify things, I know if I'm shopping online and I pick out some things and then I realize, oh, the shipping's going to cost almost as much as the product, I just don't buy it. So trying to help that out a little bit, just make it easier for everybody. Yeah, go check out huntersmake.com, and also one other thing is, as I prepare for these videos, I make several carvings, and my carving shelf is starting to get full. So I've decided to take some of these carvings and offer those for sale as well on my website. So if there's a particular video, and I'm not going to have a lot of these, and they're when they're gone, they're gone. But if you are really interested in something I've carved, go check out the website huntersmake.com and find the section where I have these carvings. And you never know, you might be the lucky guy and grab the carving and have that to reference as you're trying to carve them. So, all right. And as always, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below and I'll get back to you. Thanks. We want, as I mentioned before, the top side of this brim will be farther forward than the bottom of it. So we do want to angle that in. We can do a little bit of that right now, just to kind of remind us of that. I'm just trying to pay attention to where the tip of my knife is, so don't cut too far. See, I just kind of angled that. Yeah, it's kind of flatten down the forehead area slightly. I'm going to go along this top line here, do the outside edge of the brim while we can still see our line. Remember, keep your fingers tucked out of the way when you're getting close to an edge like this. And we can push that above there, that can get pushed back. We can kind of work on that as we go. Okay. And around the forehead area over. Okay, let's do a little marking here. So this will be kind of the hat sitting back on top of his head. So there'll be quite a bit of his hair exposed. So we're going to roughly draw in a hairline just for reference for right now. Okay, and then we'll come down maybe about a third or a little more of that distance to make the brow ridge. I think that looks about right. And right below or even with the brow ridge, I'm going to have some ears over here. See, one thing I've got wrong here. I've kind of got the face shifted off to the side of the center line. So let's just get our magic eraser out here. I just think shaving a thin layer off is a lot easier than trying to use an actual eraser. Most of the time anyway, it's just cleaner. And it's always good practice for knife control. See how thin you can get that. Only shave off the pencil lines. Okay, let's try that again. Only this time, start with the center line. Okay. I also kind of have a ridge here. Let's try this again now. So we can put the ears on here. Okay, then in front of the ears, he's got a little bit of sideburns, halfway down on the ear. And then that's going to kind of come across. Do the same thing over here, but halfway or a little less down the ear of the sideburn. And then we're going to bring that up, come across. There, that's better. Now we have our hairline kind of centered on our nose. Okay, then we're gonna, like I said, we'll go about, roughly about at the top of the ears, maybe just a little higher. We'll draw in the brow line. Okay, and then about at the bottom of the ears, maybe not quite at the bottom of the ears, it's going to be the bottom of the nose. And we'll just kind of make 3 circles here. Draw that in there roughly. Equal distance, typically, from the brow line to the bottom of the nose. I just like doing this, kind of hold my finger on the pencil, and I flip it around, put my finger on the nose, and then that marks the chin. Now this area between the nose and the chin, we're going to divide it into thirds. Approximately. It'll be the top of the upper lip, the bottom of the bottom lip, and then this is the chin down here. Okay? So this is our chin. We have our jawline come down below our ear a little ways and then down to the... So then the next thing I want to do after marking this out, mainly just to figure out where I wanted the nose to be, I'm going to come in here under the nose and I'm going to push that back a little bit. We can just go ahead and take that all the way down to the bottom of the piece of wood. And we can go from here and we can bring that down a little bit towards the brow line. Slight angle here. Grab this number 5 and I'm going to kind of start making a little relief here for the eye sockets. I like extending that out towards the edge of the face. Come over here and do the same. Just kind of keep looking at it, make it at the same. Okay, so I'm just kind of making a relief there for the eye sockets. You don't want to go too deep. And we can kind of come up beside the nose a little bit with that as well. I think take some of this forehead back. Okay, as I was looking at this, my original spot for the chin, I believe, was too high. That ends up making more of a rounded face than Gilligan has. So I'm going to bring this down just a little bit further. I'll erase these lines here. Yeah, that looks better. Now, at the chin here, we're going to kind of start cutting that in and bringing it back again, just to make that chin stand out. It's kind of starting the beginning shapes here of the jaw. As I bring that bottom piece of the wood back. Okay, we're starting to have a face in there anyway. Still doesn't look much like Gilligan. Who was your favorite Gilligan's Island character? Mine was always Gilligan. I mean, he did have an island named after him. I was showing my kids that I was gonna, or telling my kids I was gonna carve Gilligan, and like, who? I had no idea. I must not have imparted enough cultural goodness. They didn't know who Gilligan was. Getting the square edges off of the nose here. A lot of work to do there yet, but just something to get us started. Okay, kind of have our eye sockets roughed out. I think I'll maybe bring that one in a little flatter on outside here. Okay, that looks about the same. Okay, kind of draw our hair back in. Got a sharp edge right here on the cheek. Smooth that out a little bit. Okay, let's work on the mouth. So, want to go, here's our center line. Let's go out almost the center of the eyeball, but not quite. Make a little dot there. A little dot there, and we'll start pushing the cheeks in there a little bit where the corners of the mouth are going to be. And for that, I'm going to use this little number 11. Just going to kind of take some little bites here in a circle. We'll just start with a kind of a divot in there. Okay, we'll come up here with the smile line. Kind of bring that down to those corners of the mouth. Kind of angle. They're not going to go super deep here. I don't think it was real prominent on Gilligan. Okay, do the same over here. Undercut the nose a little bit. What I'm trying to do is just trying to create a mound down here where we can put the lips on. And we'll just kind of angle our knife down so the handle end is kind of angled out towards where the lips are going to be. We'll just kind of go around that area. Now, I'm sure there are others that are better at doing this or describing what I'm doing. I'm just trying to show you kind of how I work my way through it. Okay, I think I'm happy with how that upper lip is kind of shaped for now. I mean, where the lip is going to be. I'm going to take this number 11, go right in the center. That little groove going up to the bottom of the nose. That'll be the top of the, I'm sorry, the bottom of the top of the top lip here. It's kind of the lowest point right here by this little notch. It comes up, then back down. It'll be the top lip. We'll go ahead at an angle. And we're going to use pretty light pressure here. I don't want to go too much when you're working on fine detail like that. If you put your knife in there too far, your knife does have a taper on the blade, and you'll start putting pressure sideways on those wood fibers and they'll tear. So when you're working on details like this, the name of the game is real thin, fine cuts, and don't force your knife in there and spread them apart. Okay. And slicing motions too will help with that. And we'll come back and refine that a little bit more in a minute. Now we're going to kind of do bottom lip, and it meets at these corners. And when we're angling our knife down away from that lip, and again, I'm not going very deep, and we'll come up to it very carefully. Just pretty subtle shaping going on here. And then on the top side of the bottom lip, and I want to make a little gap across here. Again, just very carefully. Don't try to go too deep. And then come back from the top. Make sure your knife is sharp and it has a good point on it. If you've busted the tip of your knife off, I do have a video on how you can correct that. But this is a particular case where you need a nice sharp tip on the end of your knife. Okay, and then we're gonna bring that bottom, I'm sorry, it's bottom because he's upside down. Bring the top lip, taper it a little bit down towards that opening. Make sure you're cutting those wood fibers and not tearing them. And we'll clean up pencil lines on this side. This is where earlier I mentioned it's good practice to slice off those pencil lines. Pays off. You'll learn that knife control. And a lot of what I mean by knife control isn't just where to put your knife, but to control the angle of the blade in relation to the wood. That will control how deep your knife will cut. And you got a nice sharp knife, you should be able to just make a see-through thin shaving on a piece of wood. Okay? I think that's looking pretty good for now. I'm sure as we're getting down to finalize things, we might play with that a little bit more. He's looking pretty good. Kind of bring the chin jawline here in a little straighter. Just trying to smooth out some of these lines on the face. Little ridges that have been left from shaping. If you kind of hold the piece and roll it around like this, the light will catch those and kind of show you or exaggerate what it is you have there. You can decide, some carvings you want those great big facets and make it obvious that it's a wood carving. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes you want to smooth it out a little bit. I guess my style is kind of somewhere in between. I don't worry about it too much. Okay. I think before we got more work to do on the nose. The nose isn't quite right yet. Gilligan has a pretty straight, narrow nose at the bridge and kind of flares out towards the bottom. So let's work on the eyes. Now, sometimes what I like to do, because the when we're thinking about ratios and facial dimensions and things like that, there's kind of a consensus that there's roughly 5 eyes wide. The head is 5 eyes wide. Now, this typically is with this hat where this head and his ears fall, it's about 2 inches wide. Pretty close. Now this ruler on this side is actually marked out in tenths. So there's 20 tenths across here. So if we divide 20 by 5 to 5 eyes wide, we should have 4. So 4/10 of an inch is how wide an eye is. So if we say our 1 inch is right on the center, then we go over 2/10 of an inch. That should be the inside corner of our eye. And we go over this way 2/10. And you don't have to measure this out, but if you struggle with getting your eyes the same size and getting the placement right, you could use a similar method. You realize not everybody's going to have a ruler that's graduated like this, but you can kind of figure it out. So there's our 1 eye width between the eyes. So from 2/10 to 6/10 out here is another 4. And we'll go from 8 back to 4 here. So there we have eye size and horizontal location figured out anyway. You can see that looked nice and balanced. Okay, from side corner, we're going to come up a little steeper. Rather than make a perfect almond-shaped eye, we're going to come up a little bit more in the beginning. Do a little curve and then come back down to the center over here. We'll do that on both sides just so we stay the same. Come up pretty steep. Okay, and then on the bottom, we'll do kind of the opposite. We're going to come from this corner, not exactly on the line, but maybe just a little bit down from it. And we're going to be almost flat, a little bit of curve. And then once we're past the center line, we'll curve back up. Okay, again from this side, almost flat, a little curve. Once we're past the center line, come right back up. Oh, this line here went a little too high. It's kind of hard to draw on that. Probably should take a little more off of here. Brow ridge is sticking out quite a ways. I just have to remember this eye was drawn just a tiny bit too high over here. So let's start over on this one. We're angling away from the center of the eye slightly. Starting here, we're going to push our knife in fairly deep. And then very controlled, we're going to work that knife around on that line. Try to do this so you can see it. And making sure we're going straight in when we get to the corner. Do the same thing here. Going to stab it in deep in the corner and then kind of allow it to come out a little less deep as you go around. Okay, now that we have those cut in there, I like to take my knife and just kind of almost parallel with the table if I'm holding the piece flat, and just kind of go in towards the nose and get that chip out of there. And then kind of roll the knife around. Cutting back away from the center of the eye. Okay, and on the bottom we want to bring that kind of cut that cheek away, front of the eye. Okay, now let's do the same thing over here again. They can just kind of be distracting when you're trying to do these fine details, leftover lines. And I try to get the eyeball in here as nice and smooth as possible. It will just help us in the next step when we go to cut in the eyelids. So eye does come up a little bit higher than the other one, but it's not bad. It's hard to get them precisely the same, and that's really nothing to worry about anyway. I mean, we're not seeking perfection. I don't know if perfection's that interesting anyway. Okay, as I study this a little bit and look at my reference image of Mr. Gilligan, it seems like we've got these smile lines a little too deep for him. I'm going to try to soften those up a little bit. And just to kind of make everything even, I'm carrying that or trimming that down up here beside the nose as well. So that was an example right there of that knife control that so useful. And when it gets to the point where it's second nature for you, that's when you don't have to think about things like that. You can just think about what you're trying to make. Like there, see how thin we can, just by changing the angle of the knife, just shave off such fine little thin pieces. And we're coming down to the end of your carving and you want those fine details. That's what it's going to take. Because I'm sure there might be somebody in the world that can just quickly push in there and do all these cuts and have it be like they need it to be. But I don't know, that's not me. It takes refinement, patience, and commitment to doing that. Okay, it's looking a little better. A little bit more over here yet. I kind of shave some of this off with the knife up here on the cheek. Okay, now as I look at this, I think I want to curve the very top of the head back. This forehead just looks too flat, too big. I just want to cut this in a little bit here. Remember, this hat is sitting on top of his head. It's not pulled down over his forehead. just kind of sitting up there on top. By doing this, we're going to have to adjust that hat brim, which is fine. Let's smooth this ridge out that we just created. And just to go on a little bit more about this knife control, like in a situation here where I'm kind of going around a curved object and I'm trying to do a thin slice, one thing, you see I have my thumb here, so I'm holding, it's like, and I don't know if you just call it opposing forces here. I'm holding the knife down, but I'm also kind of lifting up against my thumb with this other hand. And that allows me to really have control of the depth, and it also is a solid point to change the angle of the knife. So as I go across here and I want to just remove that little ridge, that's what I'm doing. So kind of push against yourself just to get it steady and smooth, and then change the angle of your knife to change the depth of your cut. Okay. And yeah, we're going to have to adjust this hat brim a little bit, which is fine. We're going to come in here and bring it back up to that angle. Actually, I think that's going to end up being a little big. So let's kind of rethink this. Out here. And we're going to have to remove quite a bit up here. The head, I had the forehead shaped wrong, so when I reshaped it, it brought it down lower. But so all this up here is too high. So I'm going to take this new line here, make this the outside edge of the brim. Okay, well, we're working on kind of redefining our outer hat brim. It was just kind of a miscalculation there. Well, we could have left it. It would have been fine that way. But I just think it looked a little too big. Okay, so you can see I have that kind of reshaped. It's just kind of lightly defined right now. I'll go ahead and clean this up, push it back, kind of bring this down. First thing I'm worrying about here is just getting it to that shape, looking at it from the front. And as we get closer to the top, we want a little bit of that back part of the hat showing, but not that much. So we need to bring that down. That's cutting across end grain, so it's kind of a hard cut. Make sure your knife is sharp. Okay, now we need to push this back here and kind of get behind that hat brim. And it's end grain up here. It's kind of tough to do. I'm just going to take it easy so I don't break things. Kind of going at making some V cuts up here. We're going to end up with a pretty fragile edge here, the hat brim. So if you start out with the mindset that you got to be careful, things are more likely to work out for you than if you just go crazy trying to remove the wood quickly and then all of a sudden you break something. So take your time, think about what you're doing, especially in these areas like this end grain, this top grain here, where it's not easy to cut. So kind of have a plan to do so carefully. And we worked around that side. Where we're starting, you have to excuse my voice. I've had a bit of a cold this last week. So we got the kind of the back side of the hat brim going on here on this side. And we want to continue that over here. Again, just making some V cuts. We'll excuse me, we will worry more about the top of the hat up here in a little bit. Starting by just defining that hat brim, because to me that's the more delicate part of this. It's the area where you don't have as much room for air. Okay, see how we have the hat brim sticking out and hiding the rest of it back here. That's looking good. Now we got to come back up here and work on the top part of the hat. Kind of done that forehead correctly in the first place, we wouldn't have so much wood to remove here. But that's okay. That's kind of how it goes. You have a plan and go for it and adjust as you go. Get the results you want. But the whole thing's got to come down yet. I think you're going to square that up as if it were sitting back on his head. So what I'm thinking is that the front of this hat should kind of come back at an angle like that. Where if we're making this fully 3D, the top of the hat would sit back here. If that makes sense. So I think I want to bring right in the center, I want to bring it, change that angle. Kind of liking that. And then see how that front of that hat is about at an angle, as if if your hat was sitting straight on your head, it'd be like this. Well, he's pushed that hat back so the angle's like this. Okay. And sticking with that idea, I think I'm going to take the back edge of this down. What do we want to do next? We need to do the hair. Right now it just kind of looks like a big bald forehead, kind of like mine. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, Anyway. But that's not the way Gilligan is. He's got hair. So we'll need to get that detail in there. However, I think that's one of the last things I want to do. So if we take a look at what we got here, face is really coming together. Got the hat details done. We need hair. But right now it looks like he's really shrugging his shoulders. We need to bring this down. Gilligan's kind of got a skinny neck. So we don't need to have all this out here. Now we're going to save, let's do a little sketching here. If his neck is going to come down there, we need a little bit coming out here for his collar. Something like that. He's wearing that famous red polo shirt, red shirt with a white collar. So we come around here. It was kind of a, just looking at the reference image here, you know, the collar, the corners of the collar seem to be quite a ways apart on his shirt. In fact, I think we'll just even bring them out more like this. Okay. And of course, we'll push this back in there. But what I'm getting at is I want his shoulders to come up here. Something like that. So we have all this waste material. So let's kind of go after that. We're going to come in here underneath the ear, the stop cut. Come up to that. And I'm going to start down here on the, put my knife in right at the line I drew for his shoulder. And that's one of those very satisfying cuts where you're pushing it in and the knife splits it out to the side. It's just kind of fun. I don't know. I think so. Then we can just bring stop cuts down, do that, and just keep bringing that back. Now, the one thing to watch out for is if you're coming down to this, don't go down to your line or you'll end up a bunch of cut marks across there. So just bring it down close and then follow your line. Kind of go back and forth till it comes out. And just continue that process till we get back into the neck, or the collar, I should say. Now we've opened that up now. There's some detail to be done there, but let's kind of do that same process over here. Let's start down here. He's starting to not shrug his shoulders as much. That's good. Okay, now now this will have to kind of get cut down and laid down around the neck, kind of a different dimension. So we'll get there. But first, I think I'm going to mark out these collars. Just take a nice deep cut down to the corner, stand my knife up so it stops on that line. And I'm actually going to kind of undercut this a little bit in a curved manner, and that just to give it a little bit of space underneath the front edge of that collar. Okay. See how we kind of undercut that? We can round these front edges of the shoulder. And even though we're not carving the back, I like to just round those a little bit as well. Okay, now I'm going to come in here a little bit and mark out the inside of the collar. Do the same on this side. And we're going to need to cut in underneath the chin so that we can push all that back. Okay. And we just use see how that kind of fits the shape of the knife? Let's use that to an advantage and just kind of push the knife up in there, and it'll break that chip out. And that doesn't fit up in this side. Let's come over to here and do this direction, and over here and do this direction. I think our wind finally went down. It was really windy today. It's quieter in here, and it's actually quite a bit warmer. I have to turn my heat down here in a second. It's pretty cold this morning. I think this morning was one of the coldest days we've had so far this year. Okay, and that collar that comes up kind of wraps around like that. And we'll need to get that material out between the collar and the neck. Slicing and rolling. It's a good way to get in those tight areas. Okay, now we need to bring this side down, bring the collar down. So just kind of like we did here, we need it to be just over, but we didn't define the bottom edge of the collar here. Might want to smooth that back so it doesn't look like it comes up and bends hard over his shoulder. And we can erase our pencil lines. I had a video I put out recently on carving penguins, and I got 30 views, but I didn't like it. I wasn't happy with the video. It was almost 3 hours long, and I just wasn't that happy with it, so I pulled that video off of there. So in case those 30 people that watched those videos are wondering where their penguin video went, that's what happened. I just wasn't happy with it, so I took it down. When I published the video, I thought maybe it was all right, and then later I was just thinking I can do better. So anyway, that being said, if you guys want a specific video or content topic of a video, let me know. If you've noticed, I got a new shirt. Basically, I'm just here for the comments. So give me your comments. If you want a shirt like this too, we have those on our website. But anyway, yeah, I enjoy hearing from you guys and hear what your thoughts are about the videos and maybe what you'd like to see or what you've been carving. Are you just getting started carving, or you've been carving a while? What are you up to? Let me know. I am pretty good about answering every comment. Might take me a day or two sometimes. But okay, just kind of fussing with this collar, maybe a little more than I need to. Okay, let's go for the other one now. It's kind of doing some of the steps we did on the other side. There we go. Okay, I think I want to clean this a little bit more in here. Doesn't have to go a lot. Come around this shoulder just a little more. Okay, had to take a little break there. Just kind of started coughing and couldn't stop. Let's see where we're at. Let's soften this collar edge a little bit. Get rid of the pencil lines. Oh yeah, I remember what I was doing before I started dying. Okay, I was working on this part of the shirt here. It's kind of folded, so we want to undercut this a little bit. The collar kind of comes down and okay, that's looking pretty good. Just going to come along. I always like to knock the sharp bottom corner off my carvings. Doesn't really need it. It's just something I do. Okay, what's next, guys? Waiting. What's next? Oh, that's not how this works. Okay. And let's work on the hair. We still got to do eyelids. I actually think I should try to make this eye just a little bit bigger. Here we're going to take our number 5 and bring the bridge of the nose up into the brow ridge a little bit. Now he doesn't have, some people have a real pronounced divide right here between the eyebrows and the brow ridge, but Gilligan doesn't. So we're just going to kind of smooth that out. Uh-oh, breaking a big chunk off. Come from the other direction. Okay, now we have that kind of flattened out. We'll just smooth it up, clean it up here. Okay, I'm going to take this little 11 and kind of get rid of that cut mark I just put in. Okay, I've just been cleaning up, shaping around the nose. Looking for those subtle little changes that'll help tell everybody he's Gilligan. I think that nose is looking pretty good. I might want to thin up just a little bit coming up by the nostrils here. think what's really gonna set this off as Gilligan is the hair. It's a pretty good likeness right now. It's not perfect, and I think once we give it that hair, so that you can kind of see what we're trying to convey with his hat being back, and it's kind of that classic Gilligan look. So let's go after that next. Okay. Hair. So on Gilligan, I like to start with kind of the ear. When we talk about hair, I like to start with the ears. Sounds kind of silly to say that out loud, but what I'm talking about is I like to have the ears defined. This has to get cut in here, here. And the reason I say that is he's got a little bit of a sideburn. Comes up right in front of his ear. And the hair goes around it. And then comes up. And about right at the eye, kind of makes a jog up. And we'll kind of do that at the side here. And then what we want to do is bring the hair and just kind of zigzag it. There, see what I mean by that? To me, that turns him into Gilligan. I'm not sure why. So now that we have that drawn there, let's go over the top of this ear and kind of get that marked out. And we got to be careful. We're right on this thin edge. So we're kind of just getting the ears to pop out a little bit over here. It's going to make a little triangle cut here behind the bottom of his ear. Pop that out. Okay, we'll just do a little bit of a V cut between the sideburn and the ear. And across the bottom of the sideburn. We'll take out a little corner. Okay, now let's, since we're right here working on things, you can get rid of these pencil lines. And then we'll go ahead and put a little detail in the ear. We're not going to go crazy with the detail because it's a little head. The ears aren't our main focus here. I like to make a tiny little triangle cut right where the ear canal is. And then that, I go once around the inside of the ear. Okay, we'll get the other one that far. We'll go where the ear meets the head here and just kind of, let's go ahead and mark the bottom of this sideburn. the front of the ear, take that little chip out. And then we're going to take a walk around the hairline here, not super deep. Go up to the first point, come back, come up to that again. And we just kind of zigzag our way across. That's an unfortunate thing. Okay, then we'll just keep going. Okay, now we're going to come back, paying real close attention to where the tip of the knife is. Go up into that first little spot. We'll drop down, come up to the next one. You might have to kind of stand your knife up to get in there. For right now, we're not worried about the groove we're cutting in there. We'll come back and even that all out and then start again at the next one. And let's continue that down. Over to the ear. And thinking about the ears, we're going to have to make this one a little smaller. Can't make the other one bigger. That's a little closer. Okay, now have our kind of our hair design in here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is kind of go back across the forehead and blend in that ridge we just created by cutting along the hairline. It's kind of blending, cleaning up. This is one of those, take your time and make sure you have good knife control so you don't break out a big chunk of his forehead. Okay, and then we'll clean up pencil lines along the way if we've left any. Okay, two little details left I want to do. First one is we need to have some eyelids in there. You carve the eyeball, which is the mound. How I look at it is basically carve it as if the eyes were completely closed. You're still going to have that ball there. And then you're going to have him open his eyes, and then you have to carve the eyelids. So I don't go tight to the corner. Come close to it, and with a very light pressure, just kind of scoring the wood, not cutting deep at all. And then again, a sharp knife, patience, and you'll get there. Now this is hard to do, or I shouldn't say it's hard to do. It takes practice to do, and sometimes when I got a camera in between me and my carving like this, it's a little harder. Now I'm going to do the bottom eyelid. And again, don't put much pressure there. And we want to cut down to that line we just made. Very carefully. It's so easy to chip these out, chip out the eyelids. And then it just kind of goes downhill from there. So take your time. Just kind of scratch the wood, just barely score it. Now, if you, the size of the carving can drastically change how difficult this is to do. Okay, I'm not going to do a lot more with this eye. Okay, it doesn't have his eye open very much. It's not a very big eye. Okay, let's do this one. Those are going to be some tiny eyes to paint. I think what I want to do is maybe try to open those eyes up a little bit by lowering the bottom eyelid. And I might take some off the top as well. And we'll do a little bit of that over here. It takes patience to get this right. Okay, I think I'm going to leave well enough alone there. Okay, the last thing to do, a little more detail and texture in the hair. I grabbed my Flex Cut V tool, and we're just going to start by coming up with these little tufts of hair that stick down or curve off to the side here. Just put a little more definition in those. Over here we might take a kind of a part up into the hat. Somewhat not real definite. And then start making some. You never want to make your hair detail straight. So we're just kind of waving it over here. And then what I tend to do, I make one or two that are kind of long, following through just to kind of define the general movement of the hair. And then I'll come back somewhat random, but yet I'll find these little spots that are still flat, and I'll come and put some different curving and moving lines in there just to kind of break things up. And like we talked about before with kind of looking at the facets, hair kind of is a good thing to do that with too. Let's just kind of get him out here, get it in good light, and just kind of roll it back and forth. And what I'm looking for when I do that is any kind of a out of place, larger, flat spot. Maybe right here, I'll come in and just put a little groove in there. That looks pretty good. Okay, I think we have a Gilligan, or somewhat of a likeness thereof. Might just come back through and look for any tags of wood sticking out or any other little thing like that that I can clean up. And you could spend literally an hour doing just that, just kind of perfecting every little aspect of the carving. And maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you want this to be your showcase piece, and spending a little extra time is worth it. Now, for me, in the context of making YouTube videos, we really can't afford to do a lot of that. So I have to, at some point, say, you get the idea. A little bit of a rough edge up here on this hat brim. I don't like how it's hitting the light. Take off the cut glove and get my magic bottle of spray here, water, and just kind of soak them up, let that rub in there a little bit. Just kind of helps see some of the detail. Well, there you go, guys. There's a nostalgic look back at my one of my favorite TV shows, Gilligan's Island. Hope you enjoyed this carving. It's been a lot of fun to do. If you enjoy this carving and others like it, you know, it only take you a second. Go down there below the viewer and click on that like button for me. It helps helps tell YouTube that, hey, this video is all right. Somebody else might want to watch it. And if you're not subscribed already and you enjoy this kind of stuff, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And we'll just keep making videos and having fun. So, all right. Thanks for watching.